Hello and welcome back to the Kitty Items video series. In this last video, we are going to take all of the changes that we made in the previous video and deploy them to testnet because all of the previous changes were happening on the emulator. Now we're going to take those changes and redeploy them to testnet. If this is your first time tuning in to this video and you haven't watched the previous ones, there's part 1, 2, 3, and 4, which walk you through how to install Kitty items and all the necessary dependencies, how to start Kitty items on testnet and make sure that everything's running correctly, how to take it to the emulator. So run it locally with the local emulator, the local deb wallet, and making changes to it. And then you're here. So if you already watched all of that, it's great to have you. Let's get started. So to update what we did on the emulator and run it on testnet, really what we need to do is restart testnet. So if you remember, we were running the emulator so far, so that we can do npm run dev testnet, which will stop all of the previous launch processes to ensure that none of the emulator processes are running, and it will rerun the web and API services using the testnet environment variables. So we are going to say that, yes, we want to use the existing testnet credentials. This will come up anytime you rerun npm run dev testnet. It'll ask you if you want to reuse the testnet credentials, and you want to say yes, so that we don't have to recreate a testnet account. Of course, if you want to recreate a testnet account, feel free, just select no, and it'll walk you through that flow again. This is useful if you get stuck or, something's not working right. You should probably try recreating a testnet account. And that testnet account should be created using this flow. So it should be created using the faucet. And the reason why it needs to be created using this flow is because when it generates those public key and that link for you to open the faucet with, it's actually saving the private key in its config. So make sure that you use it using this flow. So we're good. We don't need to see the logs, and we can go back to localhost 3001 just to be safe. I'm going to close the tab and restart it because that's usually causing some issues if you're still logged in with the deb wallet. Now that we are on dev testnet, right, what we want to do is update the contract, right? So we ran this, we got everything running. Now we want to update the contract. So what it's going to do, it's going to take all of the contracts that we changed, which is in our case, the Kitty items contract, and it's going to redeploy that. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did for the emulator and run a transaction to ensure that the Kitty items contract metadata, so like the actual images, right, contains shades by running the special function that we defined here, add new images per kind. It will use that function to update the Kitty items images property to add the shades. Again, if you didn't watch the previous video, the reason we have to do this small step is because when you deploy a contract on chain, the init function where we originally define the image paths for Kitty items, in this location here, you see that we are in the init function of the contract. Where we define this only gets executed once on deployment. So if we update the contract, it doesn't get executed. The solution there is either to run a transaction, which is what we're going to do, or to redeploy the contract completely to, for example, a new address. But yeah, let's npm run update testnet, npm run update testnet. And what this is doing is it is using the .m variables. It's going to do flow project deploy using the flow.json and the flow testnet.json. And you'll see it's deploying one contract, the Kitty items contract, and it's deployed successfully. Awesome. And the way that we can double check this is reopen FlowView source. Remember we had FlowView source open since before we made the change. Look at here. There should be, we see how we have kind and skateboard as our last types here. If we refresh this page, we have shades and shades. So yeah, the update worked successfully. Cool. So what do we want to do now? Well, yes, now we have to do the transaction. So the transaction to actually update the metadata, right? So we're going to copy this transaction. And similarly to what we did on the emulator, let me move my face, is we have we're going to send a transaction using the signer, which is the testnet account. And it's going to use the same file that we used for the previous one. And as input configs, it's going to use flow.json and the flow.testnet.json and the testnet network instead of emulator. So let's run that. So it's created the transaction. We can actually inspect this transaction as it's happening by going to FlowView source, going to homepage, putting transaction here, and boom, it's sealed. Awesome. I was too slow. Yeah, sealed, all done. We have updated the contract. Now, if we rerun, let's mint our first kitty items again. Let's go to mint item. Oh, you see the shades are appearing, meaning it's working. Let's see if we're lucky enough to get the shades first try. Now you see why it's important to use the emulator, because if we were to debug transactions with testnet all the time, it would take a lot longer. Whereas the emulator is just real time and you don't have to worry about, for example, testnet undergoing maintenance or anything like that. And everything is ready to go. It's awaiting sealing. Usually testnet is a lot faster than this, but sometimes, there's some delays. And we have a purple fishbowl. Now I'll leave it as an exercise for you to try and mint some shades on testnet and extra points if you get the gold rarity. I haven't gotten gold yet, and I've tried kitty items a bunch of times. So if you do get gold, make sure you tweet out to me, Mutonia, on Twitter, and I'd love to see your gold kitty items. And yeah, we have everything set up. Now you know how to make changes to your code, high level, how the application was set up. Feel free to dive deeper into the code. Make sure that you read through the code and kind of understand what's happening. If you have questions, reach out. We have a special channel just for kitty items in our Discord, discord.gg/flow. Always reach out to me if you have questions, or just file an issue on GitHub directly in the repo, which is probably the best way to get things solved, especially if you face random issues that you don't know how to get through. Again, this is a pretty complex application. This is not supposed to be a hello world tutorial. I know that I've said this already in previous videos. This is a pretty complex application. There's a lot of moving parts. It's important, first of all, to understand, who this is useful for. This is useful for people who want to see what a real end-to-end application looks like and wants to build off of it. It's important to understand that there's a lot of dependencies required. And if those dependencies are not met, there could be some issues, right? And things could break. But if you follow the things that we've done together in each video, as you saw, things were working, you shouldn't have problems. And if you have ideas on how to improve it, of course, please feel free to contribute directly. Even if it's just a typo, even if it's just, small changes, anything is welcome. So for next steps, if you want to learn more about the NFT marketplace product flow, then you should check out our NFT marketplace guide, which you can find right below the kitty items tutorial. This will give you a more theoretical and high-level overview of all the building blocks required. For example, custodial versus non-custodial, key capabilities, minting NFTs, like what building blocks we have. So we have the NFT standard, Flow token, all of the comparisons between Ethereum and Flow. So if you're coming from Ethereum, this is really useful to understand, like, hey, where's, what's the equivalent of Web 3.js? Oh, that's FCL. What's the equivalent of ERC 721? Oh, that's the Flow NFT metadata standard, right? What wallets are there? Boom, you have the answer here. So also information on handling accounts, on minting NFTs, on selling NFTs, and best practices. This is important to understand because if you want to re-implement kitty items or your equivalent kitty items from scratch, this marketplace guide will have much more cross-applicable information than, like, let's say, specific code that's found on kitty items, because you can choose to implement things however you want, but you should follow these best practices. So learn more about the NFT marketplace. Feel free to expand and improve on your kitty items project so you can adjust rarity. As we saw, there's like various tiers of rarity. Try to add a new rarity type. Try to tweak the rarity parameters. Try to update the metadata. We recently added the new metadata standard which is a really cool way of modularizing and abstracting away the concept of what is metadata, meaning that anyone can create a way to expose metadata that's relevant to them. And contracts can therefore not have to worry about specific types of metadata or specific types of fields being included in a contract. They just see if a specific type of metadata resolver view is available. And then here's a couple other ideas that you can follow. So, how do you add more utility around the concept of an NFT marketplace, right? NFT marketplaces are much more than just buying and selling. NFTs represent participation, represent community, represent maybe a connection with a cultural phenomenon. There's so much more beyond building the app that you should try out. A really cool challenge is supporting one of Flow's name services like Flow NS or Flow name service or find, as well as if you're really feeling adventurous, you can support royalties. So feel free to try and implement this in kitty items, meaning that anytime a kitty items is sold on the marketplace, the original buyer gets a percentage of the sale. Awesome. So if you've made it this far, there's one last step that I'm going to ask of you, and it's for you. It's not for me. If you go to the update section, there's this little thing called congratulations on completing this tutorial. You made it to the very end. We're rewarding you with a unique float NFT. So how do you claim that float NFT? Well, first of all, you open that link and you'll see there's this kitty items float ready to be claimed by whoever completes the tutorial. Again, this is based on the honor system. So please only claim this if you finish kitty items all like from start to finish. And where you will see your secret code is going to opening the file that we created to run the transaction to update the contract. Okay. So you kind of only have it if you followed along the whole way. And in that comment before the execute statement, there is the secret code. Once you connect your wallet, it's going to ask you for a secret code, and that's where you'll need to input the secret code and click claim. So I won't say the secret code here because, you're going to have to work for it. But this float, which is a proof of attendance NFT, will be yours if you go through everything. This is a little reward for being awesome, for getting through key items. And if you're double awesome, you'll also go through the next steps and you'll also help us improve kitty items with some contributions on GitHub. Anyways, it's been a blast. Thanks for sticking around and all the best in your flow building journey. Again, if you need anything, always reach out. Feel free to contribute directly on GitHub and take care. Bye-bye.